What is up, everybody? Welcome back to part 8 of my John Ferrick book review, Wrecking Crew Demolishing the Case Against Steven Avery. If you're into the Making a Murderer case, the case against Steven Avery and Brendan Dassey, I highly recommend getting this book. You can pick it up on Amazon. That's where I got my copy. It is a fantastic read. What I'm doing is I'm going over this book, going over what was talked about at the time. Obviously, much more has come out since this book was published a few years ago, but what I am doing is just going over what is talked about in this book and the evidence and information that was available at the time the book was printed. So if something is in the book and new information has come out since, I'm not necessarily going to talk about that. We're just discussing what was going on at the time the book was written. John Ferrick talks about how if the charges brought against Steven Avery were based on fabricated evidence placed by the cops, that it was going to have to be rock solid fabricated evidence, and the best way to do that was to involve DNA. He talks about how nobody involved in the Teresa Halbach murder investigation wanted Steven Avery to be able to prove his innocence for a second time. He states that Sheriff Peterson wanted Steven Avery found guilty and sent away for the rest of his life, and in my opinion, and the opinion of many other people, they wanted Steven Avery sent away for the rest of his life, whether he committed this crime or not. They just didn't want him to be able to collect the $36 million he was owed from his original wrongful conviction stemming from the case in 1985. The book states that Mark Weirgert and Thomas Fassbender visited the Aurora Medical Center in Manitowoc with Steven Avery on November 9th, 2005. At this point, Steven Avery wasn't even under arrest for the murder of Teresa Halbach. He was being taken into custody on a gun charge. During the examination, the nurse took 2 groin swabs of Mr. Avery, which she wasn't supposed to do. The search warrant specifically stated that the only DNA to be taken from Steven Avery was saliva and blood. And the nurse documentation leaves out the fact that she took groin swabs, something that no nurse would do. But as the rumor and innuendo goes, she was instructed to allegedly do this by Thomas Fassbender and Mark Weirgert. Thomas Fassbender and Mark Weirgert stated that they did not realize the search warrant did not call for groin swabs. They should probably have read the search warrant they were serving. Thomas Fassbender claimed that the nurse disposed of the groin swabs. The nurse never mentions, obviously, disposing of the groin swabs, allegedly. It is reported that Steven Avery overheard Mark Weirgert tell the nurse to give him the groin swabs, and Steven Avery saw Mark Weirgert walk to the garbage can as if he was going to discard of the groin swabs himself, but Steven Avery saw that he did not drop the groin swabs into the garbage can. Allegedly. The book states that Kathleen Zellner states it wasn't until 4 months after Teresa Halbach's RAV4 was analyzed by the Wisconsin State Crime Lab that investigators became interested in the hood latch. The hood latch was first introduced by Thomas Fassbender and Mark Weirgert during their March 1st, 2006 interrogation of Brendan Dassey. He then prints a lot of the questions and answers that the investigators asked Brendan Dassey during that awful interrogation. It starts on page 182 of the book. You can also watch some of it in the Netflix doc. You can look up a lot of it online as well. But, I mean, I've said this many times, but what they did was absolutely disgusting during this interrogation. Feeding him the answers to the questions, just getting the information they wanted to be able to convict Steven Avery, and Brendan Dassey was used as a pawn in this, and they didn't care what they were doing to Brendan Dassey, that they were taking his life away from him as well at just 16 years old. They knew Brendan Dassey had a low IQ. They knew they could get Brendan Dassey to say and do anything they wanted. Brendan Dassey is in a position to know that he's supposed to be able to trust these people. He's supposed to be able to trust the police. They're taking advantage of that trust. They're doing whatever they can to get Steven Avery, and like I said, to take Brendan Dassey's life from him in the process as well is absolutely horrific, absolutely disgusting. I don't know how these people involved can continue on with their everyday life after doing what they did to a 16-year-old with a low IQ. How would they feel if this was done to their son, their daughter, their family member, their friend? Things would be a lot different if this was the son of Thomas Fassbender or Mark Weirgert. This situation would have never taken place. On March 2nd, 2006 is when Ken Kratz gave the now infamous press conference where he had absolutely no facts or evidence to back up the things he said in that press conference. It's just the information they used that they got from the false confession, the coerced statement of 16-year-old Brendan Dassey. The book also talks about how Mark Weirgert transferred custody of the groin swabs to the Wisconsin State Crime Lab personally, delivering the swab collected from the hood latch for analysis. However, on the custody transmittal form, it states that Deputy Hawkins is the submitting officer, and Deputy Hawkins' name is also printed by hand as the submitting officer on the Wisconsin Department of Justice transmittal form. There is no evidence that Deputy Hawkins transmitted the swabs to the Wisconsin State Crime Lab, and all of the evidence allegedly proves that it was Mark Weirgert who delivered the hood latch swab and printed Deputy Hawkins' name on the transmittal form, which is in direct violation of chain of custody standards and protocols. That, in my opinion, allegedly shows more evidence, more information that all of this stuff was planted against Steven Avery and Brendan Dassey. Well, that's where I'm going to leave part 8 of John Ferrick's book, Wrecking Crew. Pick it up on Amazon. You might be able to find it at bookstores. I'm not sure. I got my copy on Amazon. Let me know what you think. Leave some comments below. I hope you're having a good day, and I'll see you again soon.